everything feels like it needs you right now. I feel like I need more than one of me to get everything done. You most likely are creating urgency in things that are not actually urgent. You have to have that honest conversation with yourself. Hey, emotion. Hey, fires of the day. Hey, team Slack, email, social media. Why don't you determine what I do today? And we'll see where we end up tomorrow. The reason you're scrolling through your phone and you just get sucked into this vortex of social media is because you are in deep avoidance. You know what you need to be doing. You are the owner and the operator of your business. How many hours you work is not actually important to me as what you're doing with those hours. Hello and welcome back to Ambitious. Today we are talking all things triaging. And as I say that, you might think, what the heck is triaging? What does that mean for me and for my business? And how I want you to think about today's topic and today's episode is that we're going to really unpack what it means to properly, in a CEO fashion that is rooted in scaling strategy, actually look at a to-do list, a list of the ideas you have, the things that you have to do today, the things that you kind of want to get started on that are maybe happening in 3 months, 6 months, or potentially that thing that came up today that you were not expecting. And how do we sort all of these things on this list to know what to do first, second, third, and also what just should we be completely killing off of the list. So I use the word triaging, with anyone that I talk to that's a business owner, but also with my clients, because triaging, I typically explain it to them in this analogy. When we are in business, it feels like a emergency room. Everything feels like it needs you right now. And it doesn't really matter what the thing is. You might need to get a post up on social media today. You might need to get something over to a team member that's also due today or tomorrow. But then you have a client who surprises you. And it feels like, oh my gosh, all these things need my time, my energy, my attention. I feel like I need more than one of me to get everything done. And typically, people think that when they feel this way ongoing within their business, that the issue is that they just have too big of a to-do list. There's just too much to do. I just need more time, or that there's just too many things on the to-do list in general. And the reality is that 9 times out of 10, the real issue that people have is not the volume of things that need to be done. It's not that there are things that need to be done. It's the fact that in your brain, in your current processing, in your current filter, they are all filtering as equally important. So the word triage is stemmed from, even in the most intense situations, that of an emergency room, right? You've got the person who comes in with a broken arm, you've got the person who comes in with a head wound, and you've got the person who comes in and says, I'm having weird tingling in my feet, right? Well, if you have these 3 people that come in, there is a hierarchy, even in the emergency room, of what happens first, second, third, and who takes priority. So I want you to think about that the same way for your business. Your business is going to feel most days like an emergency room, meaning there are lots of things that need to happen and a lot of people that need us, our time, our attention, and a lot of tasks that need to be completed. But even in the most extreme situations and seasons in business, there still is a hierarchy, and that is where triaging comes in. So, what really good triaging is going to do, or why today is really an important thing for you to master as a skill. Number one, it is one of the crucial things that's going to impact your energy. So people oftentimes get really, really sucked up energy and as a result, very drained because they're spending the battery that they do have on things that are not productive. So an analogy I want you to think of is, if you have 30% left on your phone battery, or even closer to dead 10% left on your phone battery, you and I both know that 9 times out of 10, you're going to close out all the apps, you're going to close out your extra browsers, you're going to put it on low battery mode, you're going to conserve energy. So one of the things that's also important is in these high pressure moments in our business, we have to know how to conserve our energy and put it in the right places. It also, which is the sexy part for most business owners, is that it really does protect your revenue. It helps you to understand, what should I be focusing on and why. One of the questions I ask a lot of business owners is, if I asked you, what are your top 3 needle movers today? What are they? And most people don't know the answer to that question, or if they do look to answer, they typically just give a guess. They don't really know why those things are their needle movers or how are they moving the needle in the business. They just kind of feel like, I think that's the right answer. And so if you don't know the top 3 needle movers in your business, it's not surprising that you're not seeing your revenue grow. And that's really because you are spending your time and energy on things that don't grow the business. And so what it leads to is you feeling super, super busy, but not really doing anything in the sense of growth. It also, by the way, is going to massively help your team and massively help your clients because your team also relies on you as a leader, as the head of your business, whether you are a consulting business, service based business, an agency. There are most likely, in some fashion, someone who relies on you, whether it's a one off project that you're working on or maybe an ongoing team member. It doesn't really matter. There's people that rely on your ability to sort information. So, for example, if I have really, really bad prioritization and knowing, okay, like we're going to kill this, we're going to do this, like if I don't have that ability to make intentional and frankly, in the moment decisions to say, okay, in this moment with all of these pressures that are happening, that's got to go, that moves to the front. If I can't sort in real time, it also dominoes. And it means that my team might be spending time on things that, again, can keep them busy, can fill up their week even, but it might not move the needle in any way within the business. And so it's really important to know not just for yourself to protect your energy, but also to protect your revenue and to protect your team and the resources and the time that they have. We have to do this in a really intentional way. So without it, as I said, you're going to feel like you're doing a lot of hours and nothing's moving the needle. When I started to think about the things I hear from clients, one of the most common things I hear is that I feel very reactive in my business. I feel like I am just like whack-a-mole type of situation. I'm just like, this comes up, I'm like, boom, we're going to put that out. Next, this comes up, boom, we'll put that out. And yes, in business, there's going to be fires. So things are going to happen every single day, 9 times out of 10, that you maybe didn't predict. A long message you weren't originally having time to dive into, an ask of a client that maybe you hadn't allocated time for. So these things do happen, but you're very reactive. And so it, as a result, means the feeling we're left with at the end of a given day, a week, a month, a quarter, and honestly, for some people, even a year, is you'll look back and be like, I feel like I got so sucked into Slack messages and emails and, these things that were put on me as like, I need this now, I need this now. But when I look back on it, I feel like I didn't really move the needle on the important stuff that really mattered to me and that frankly matters to the business. And so as a result, what it means is that the first thing that we have to actually do is adjust our perspective. Because I think a lot of business owners, and you may resonate with this, you're like, I want a strategy. Just give me a strategy. And listen, I'm going to give you a strategy today. So don't feel like this is just going to be a high level discussion. I'm going to give you a tactical exercise that you can do to triage your to-do list at any given moment. So no question, we're going to be giving you some steps. But the thing that I think is really important is that the strategy is only as effective as the person who's using it. So what I want you to think about is your perspective is going to be the starting point from how you see your business, how you see the situation. So I can give you the strategies of the tactical things to do, but if you still see your business and have this perspective that everything is equal, everything needs to be done today, everything is equally important, and you feel like everything is 911, if you are the owner of that emergency room and you don't see that there is a hierarchy or you can't in the moment identify that exists, you don't have a fighting chance of integrating the strategy to sort that room. And that is because it starts with your perspective of your business first before you ever think about the specific process of how to do it. So I want you to kind of think about these 4 lenses, okay? So when we talk about triaging, you really ultimately have to understand, do you know how to decide what matters? And I want to give you 4 different lenses to think about when you just even think about your overall to-do list, right? Or the things that you're navigating right now. One of the things that people don't ask themselves enough is impact, which is, what is the actual impact of this thing that I need to do? And it sounds silly because you think, well, of course I know the impact, right? But in the moment, you're not thinking about it. So I've had people who they say to me, okay, Kate, I'm thinking, this week I really want to create a quiz funnel. Great. I love a quiz funnel. I'm happy to dive in and make a quiz funnel. But I said, okay, quick question before we dive into making this quiz funnel. What's the purpose of this? Like, why are we making this? And it was like, oh, because 8 months from now, I really want to be able to do XYZ. Okay, great. So like now we have clarity of the impact. But then I checked in to see, does this make sense in the other things that would impact the business? So, what are the things on your list today, other than this quiz funnel that you want to build, that I wanted to kind of assess with this person's business? What impact would those have? And so I came to find out that this individual was really excited about building this funnel. And listen, I get it. I have ideas as much as the next person of something that I want to do. And it's like, no one can tell me otherwise. I'm so psyched about it. But when I asked, out of curiosity, how are your marketing and sales going? And it was like, yeah, I haven't been super consistent. And I'm like, okay, so we're focusing on something that's going to create impact 8 months from now, when the thing that we need to see momentum in and we need to see impact in today is generating leads for you and making sure that they're closing at a high rate. So I think, and I kind of gently was like, hey, when we think about the impact of where you need to see impact, it's not 8 months from now, it's today. So the first thing I want you to ask yourself is, when you're looking at all these things you need to do today or even this month, what are the impact of those things? And are they a short-term impact? Are they a long-term impact? Do they impact revenue? Are they going to impact retention? Meaning, if I do this today, will greatly increase the likeliness of how many of my clients renew with me. Okay. Do they do something in regards to, if I don't do this task, my reputation will be on the line? Okay, great. Like, that's something that obviously we care about. So we need to know, what's the impact to existing clients? What's the impact of this when it comes to revenue? What is the actual domino of why this task or this project is so important and so crucial to you? And again, if you can't label that, if you can't really know what the impact is, it's probably not something you need to be doing today. So I want you to first just ask yourself, like, in the perspective of like, do I even know why I'm doing this? Meaning, what the impact of it is. Two is urgency. So I often ask myself, what is the real consequence if I wasn't to do this today? Or what is the real consequence if I wasn't to do that this week or even this month? And in some bigger strategy plans, sometimes we're getting into the bucket of, what would happen if I didn't do that this year? What if that just wasn't a priority for me this year? And so I think it's asking yourself, what is the real urgency? Now, here is the wake up call, okay? You most likely are creating urgency in things that are not actually urgent. And that often happens, again, back to perspective, because we are so emotionally invested in seeing XYZ happen. So we bump this to the top of our list and we go, yes, this needs to get done this week. This needs to get done today. And we have this deadline on things. And that's fine. But you have to be very honest with yourself, which is why we start with impact. If we know the impact of this, does this really need to get done today? Or are you just kind of emotionally invested in this getting done today? Because something truly being urgent in your business because the business demands it is not the same thing as something being urgent just because you feel like this needs to get done today. And that distinction, for a lot of business owners, is the difference of whether your business will scale. You have to have that honest conversation with yourself of, is this truly urgent or is this me creating urgency? And it's not always a fun answer, because sometimes it means that the thing that you're creating urgency around is not going to get done because it's not really a truly urgent task or project. You're just making it one. Now, the other thing that I ask is, energetically, what does this require to get done? So energetically, does this require a, high functioning CEO brain? Is this something that I can do with my eyes closed? Or is this kind of a low energy task or a low energy project? Meaning, it's something that doesn't require a lot of brain power. It's something that doesn't require potentially a lot of intricate problem solving. It's very easy, it's simple to do versus it's something that's more complicated where I need to be more focused and I need to have more intentional streamlining of building it out and making it happen. So I do look at the energetic aspect of it because the other thing is you may be going into tasks that require you to have high energy when you are ultimately in a low energy state, or you are trying to complete this new big exciting project for something you want to do next year at the end of a day after being on meetings for 5 hours. So we do need to be very cognizant as well of what energy does something require from us, and can we be smarter about where and when we put that energy into that task or into that project to, most importantly, give it the ability to succeed. Because sometimes we're scrapping work together because we are not actually giving the task or the project the time that it deserves or the energy that it deserves. And so we also need to be very cognizant of what does it require from me to do this, not just to complete it, but to do it well. The other thing is this in, and this is like the most foofy word I'm going to use, but I'll explain. Is it in alignment? Okay. And I use this word very sparingly within business because I know it's tossed around of like, be aligned in your business, be more in alignment, right? There's a lot of alignment language that's thrown out. But one of the things that we do is when we are coaching a scaling business, we will often have them establish what their North Star is. So basically, what is the thing that they are looking to do or to achieve that really becomes like almost, I want you to think about it like your anchor. You're looking to have this big thing that everything needs to align within. So if it doesn't fit within the path to the North Star, it's probably not something that's a priority. So the question of alignment is important because you really need to have clarity of what are you even looking to do this year? What even is your purpose, your focus, your function? And with that, does this actually align as a function or as a task with what you say your focus is this year? So, as an example, if my focus this year is that I am really heavily focusing on, let's just say, visibility. Well, if I'm really focusing on visibility, that's fine. But then if the task that's taking up 95% of myself, my team, and all of our resources and energy is not correlated to visibility, do we think that visibility or that this task is a smart task to focus on? No, because it means that it's not even going to help us with the goals that we have this year. It just is something that is fun, that's exciting, that feels activating to spend our time on. So we have to have these hard conversations with ourselves. And if I could put it candidly, you having the ability to, if I could just say it directly, check yourself in moment to moment or in month to month is such a crucial skill because it means that you don't have to have someone from the outside say, hey, this doesn't feel like it's in alignment, or hey, this feels like it's not going to have any impact. You, as the owner of your business, have to be the person who can have that tough conversation with yourself. And it is a skill. I want to say this is not something you're like born with. This is a skill. It's something you have to flex, it's a muscle. And the most successful business owners that I work with have the ability to really put blinders on, to really know, okay, I know this is going to have a big impact. I know what's urgent, what's not. I know what this requires from me energetically. And so I schedule myself accordingly. And I know whether this thing that I'm excited about is actually in alignment with our North Star and where we're going. And so they have these conversations with themselves, which is what allows them to be so productive. It's not because they have less ideas than anybody else. It's not because they have less, fires or to-do lists that are smaller. It's just the fact that they can triage better than most people. And that's because they're really intentional with auditing themselves to see what's required. So you are typically not going to be overwhelmed because there's genuinely too much to do. It is because you're overwhelmed really because everything in your mind is equally weighted. So if you think about all the tasks that you have, you see them as equal, meaning they all need to get done today. They all need to get done this week. There's not really a proper triaging happening. And so this is usually what causes fires to go off in someone's business or frankly what caps their growth. So when we think about, and I audit businesses all the time to look at what they're doing and why they're doing it and what they're focusing on. And the other thing I'm noticing are kind of some core, I would say, common, very, very common mistakes that you might resonate with that maybe you're doing in your business right now. So the first is treating ideas as a task. Man, oh man, this is one of the biggest pieces because we are naturally, as entrepreneurs, we're creative individuals. Okay. So you are probably, if you're anything like me, you're probably up at late at night and you're like, oh my God, I have this idea for like a ClickUp project that I want to do. And then the next moment you're like, I think I'm going to do an event. And the next moment you're like, I'm going to start a podcast. And the next moment it's like, I have an idea for a post. Like your brain is just like psh, 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 all the time. Constant noise, constant messages. And I love that. I love that part of our brains. But if you don't harness it, every single thing that goes through your brain, you're going to be like, got to take action on that, got to take action on that. No. What we need to do is recognize that just because you have an idea does not mean that you should be executing it or acting on it. So, one of the biggest mistakes is people will have this light bulb, and that light bulb very quickly becomes a task on their to-do list versus something that they have in what we would consider to be like a parking lot, which is basically it's not on today's list. It's not on today's to-do list. It's on a list of ideas we have that could help us to grow the business. And when it comes time for us to add in another project or add in something new to do, we will then go to that list, the list of new funnels, start a podcast, run an event, redo our branding, update our ClickUp, add this system. You will go to that list when you therefore allocate capacity to do it. Instead, what most people do is they have an idea, they take that idea, immediately make it a task, and that task bloats their to-do list. And so before you know it, all your ideas of your beautiful creative brain are now on this massive to-do list of 75 things. And you think, how the heck am I getting time to do all of this? That's because you are treating the beautiful ideas that you have as an instant project or an instant task instead of allowing those ideas to sit for a moment and say, okay, does that actually make sense for me to execute right now? Does that make sense for me to press go on? And it may, but it also may not. And so this is where the strategy I'll teach you today will help you to sort that information. The other thing is to, as I was saying, we're very emotionally attached to our goals. I see a lot of people who prioritize based on their emotional tie to the project, not based off of the impact of the project itself or of the task. So you do the thing that feels easiest or fastest, or like potentially even the thing that you're very excited to dive into, but you're not necessarily focusing on the thing that actually matters in moving the needle in the business. So this is why we really need to separate the facts from the feelings and have strategies to help us sort. Because if we're just using our emotion to sort, your business will take the same roller coaster that your emotions are when it comes to your to-do list. So we want to make sure that you're not spending your energy and making decisions strictly out of emotion when really those are just things you're excited about. They're not necessarily moving the needle. The other thing, which I will say is huge, is that you are planning from the middle instead of the outcome. This one is so important, okay? You are planning from the middle, not from the outcome. And I'm going to give you an example. You log into your business, you start for the day, and you're like, okay, great, we're going to dive in. And before you know it, you are saying to yourself, okay, so what am I going to do today? If you wake up and you dive into your business and you ask yourself, what am I going to do today? That means that you are doing this exact thing I'm describing day in, day out. Instead, the real thing that you should be doing every day should already be predetermined when you wake up because you should already know where you want to go. So if you don't know what you're doing today, it's often because you don't know where you're looking to be by the end of the week. You don't know where you're looking to be by the end of the month, by the end of the quarter, or maybe even by the end of the year. And so when you lack that clarity of where am I going, I want you to think about this as like you get in your car and you, without having a destination, are like, okay, like where should we take a drive to today? There's no real rhyme or reason. You're just driving to put the windows down, take in the fresh air. Now, that's amazing. I love that for you. But also, will you get where you want to go? No. You're not going to get to your goal because you're not even following any kind of intention of I need to get to this street, to get to this highway, to get to this exit, to get to this street, to get to my destination. So we ask ourselves, okay, well, what am I going to do today? That to me is basically saying, hey, emotion, hey, fires of the day, hey, team Slack, email, social media, why don't you determine what I do today? And we'll see where we end up tomorrow. This is where you get to put yourself back in the driver's seat. You get to say, okay, tomorrow, I want you to think about tomorrow. What are you doing tomorrow in your business? So think of that list. And you might think, okay, well, I have the standard stuff I always do. I put up a social media post. I, answer clients. Okay, outside of those recurring tasks, what are you doing tomorrow in the business? And if, as I say that, you go, I don't know, this is what I'm talking about. We need to have outside of recurring daily tasks that are considered to be the maintenance of your machine of your business. You should already know what you're doing this week as your projects that move the needle in your business. And you should have already reverse engineered what are the steps you need to take. So I'll give you an example. Right now, I'm starting a second business. And so I am typically working on that business after hours, after my existing coaching consulting business. So when I finish, there's no lack of clarity of what I need to do. I am very clear and I have to reverse engineer what do I need to do, for example, in the next day or in the next week to get what I need to a team member to have her start building things that will give us something that we need built for January, right? So there's a reverse engineering that needs to happen and seeing those milestones or steps to the ultimate goal. So you want to make sure that you are not starting projects from the middle, meaning that you don't really have a end outcome, that you're kind of just like, we'll start here and you press go. The other thing is misusing a calendar. So I know that a lot of us type A, I don't want to say freaks, but maybe type A individuals like me, you overpack your day. And you have a tendency that even if you use your calendar, you might be really over bloating your calendar with all of these tasks, all of these responsibilities. And you in a day expect yourself to get 10, 15 different things done. But then by the end of the day, you don't get them done. And so you end up in this spiral of, wait a minute, I feel like I wasn't productive at all. When really, it's not that you weren't productive. It was actually that you were productive. You just had 10 things when you should have had 3. So there is a notorious problem with people who use their calendar. And I have, clients that they're like, I put everything on my calendar. It's like a military calendar, like it is dialed. But I say, where's your time in there to answer your DMs? Where's your time in there to do admin? Where's your time in there to do Slack? Where's your time in there to do XYZ? 9 times out of 10, all of those recurring tasks are not in there. So then they start to think, why am I not being productive? Well, that's because on your calendar, you work 5 hours a day, but realistically, you're working closer to 9 or 10 because there's a ton of stuff that you do that's not even on this calendar in the first place. So, you also want to be intentional that if you are someone very visual and you like to use your calendar, you like to use, to-do lists, that you're also very conscious of is your actual true reality of your life and of your tasks, is that actually on your calendar? Can you really see that? Is that truly represented? Because this was something I made a mistake of for a long time was I had, all my calendar is color blocked. I've got, a start of my day, stop of my day, all of it. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I have all this open space. Yes, but I didn't have my lunch in there. I didn't have a workout in there. I didn't have walking my dogs in there. I didn't have a lot of stuff that I do every single day. So if that's the case, I need to have those things in my calendar because otherwise, no wonder I'm feeling like I have no time. I am, in fact, working with half the time that I think I am. And so when I see all this open space on my calendar, every time it would just like trigger me to be like, why am I not getting more done? Why am I not getting more done? Because the reality is your calendar doesn't even fully represent your life. So make sure as well, if you are a calendar person like me, that you are actually using this to be a true representation of your life and the reality you're experiencing. So, I want to teach you how to overcome this. Okay. So, I'm going to teach you the triage plan. I want to first preface and give credit always where credit is due. This strategy that I'm going to be teaching you is not something that I created. It is something that has massively supported me, but it's not something that I have created. This is actually what's called the Eisenhower Matrix. This is something that if you want to nerd out on this, that you absolutely can online. I'm going to simplify it in like grade 5 language for you so that it makes it really, really easy to integrate. So that if you want to take your to-do list or the things that you're trying to tackle after today and go do this, you can. The basic essence of this Eisenhower matrix is that it is basically a simple way to sort all your tasks, all your projects by urgency, but also their importance. So there's a time aspect, meaning do I have to get this done today, tomorrow? But there's also what is this going to do for me and for my business that's also on the line. So it kind of considers both those lenses and sides simultaneously. But there is a way that most people, when they see this strategy, get very overwhelmed because they think, okay, like this is a lot to take in, this is a lot to consider. And it kind of feels like it's more work than it is supportive. So I consciously made some notes to be like, I want to help you to break this down super simplified. So this is something that I first want to break down the actual strategy of the Eisenhower matrix, because this is something that is really a structure of 4 different quadrants, 4 different strategies or awarenesses that you have to have. Second, what I'm going to do is break down how to take those 4 pieces, and I'm going to give you a literal step-by-step of what to do every single day, every week, every month. Anytime that you're feeling overwhelmed or you've got this big to-do list, and I also encourage you to make this a practice, you can take the steps I'm going to give you and literally triage your overwhelming feeling of your to-do list within a matter of like 5 to 10 minutes every single day using these steps. So, let's start with a little bit of the Eisenhower matrix itself. I want you to think about it or visualize it as like a square that has 4 squares within it, okay? So it is 4 quadrants, it is a matrix. If you want and you're more of a visual person, you can absolutely, search this up on Google and you will literally see the visual of what this looks like. But the first quadrant is really when something is important and it's urgent. Okay. So I wanted to kind of outline how to think about this. It is really firefighting in your business, meaning a fire came up. This has to be dealt with now. It's urgent. And it also is very important that we deal with it. So it is pressing happening today. And it also is significant in its impact. That's what I consider to be firefighting things. So firefighting as well as pre-existing commitments that you have already made. So for example, launch deadlines would be considered definitely important and urgent. We've got client deliverables. If you told a client that you were going to get them something, you need to get them that thing because they are your existing already paying clients, which means there's a lot of importance and there's urgency because you said you'd give it to them. So there's reputation, brand, all of that on the line. Also, payroll. If you don't pay your team, they don't work. So you need to make sure that things like payroll or any of those come up. And also just emergencies. So, for example, I had a client probably at this point, it was like 3 years ago. And when we were working together, they had a social media crisis kind of thing that happened. And they had somebody who had kind of gone to social media and said some very stern and aggressive things about them and their brand. And all of us to say, they were like, we have XYZ going on. We've got calls today. Like, I just can't deal with this. And I remember saying, you can't not deal with this. This is like, if I thought about the quadrants of anything that would be considered pressing and urgent, it is this. You need to deal with it right now because the emergency of someone, saying something on social or, you not at least having a plan of how you want to respond or what you want to do and saying, oh, whatever, I'm just going to get on calls today. You do want to think about, is there any impact? And in fact, there was impact. So we're glad that we took the time to address and talk to this person, et cetera, who was the client. But it was a fire. If, for example, you are an agency and a client's deliverables did not go out and you were supposed to publish something and you didn't publish it, you should be dropping what you're doing and getting that out, because that was, again, a commitment and it's an emergency. It is important and it is urgent that you do that. Quadrant 2 is when something is important still, but it's not urgent. So I want you to think about this as like future things and growth oriented items. Examples being, content planning, systems, your sales process, building out a new strategy for next quarter. It is something that's important. I don't want to minimize that it's not important, but it is something that is not urgent per se. So if you're thinking about, okay, well, I want to build up my marketing strategy for next month, or this client's post I was supposed to get out didn't go out, what do you think you should be doing? We need to prioritize the client. So that's, again, where the aspect of urgency comes in. So two things can be important to you and can also be important to the business, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're weighted equally when it comes to urgency. So how I want you to think about this is anything that has an impact on the business, it is important, but it's not urgent, meaning there's not really like a time sensitive nature to the task itself. Okay. So with that, it's typically going to be items that are usually centered in the future, or that they're connected indirectly in some way to the business's overall growth. Now, quadrant 3 is when we're now getting into the not important two categories, okay? So not important and urgent. So you'll see a little bit of a theme here. We've got important and urgent. We've got important and non-urgent. We've got not important and urgent. And we've got not important and not urgent. So these really kind of repeat themselves. And you're really every time asking yourself, is it important? Is it urgent? Is it not important? Is it not urgent? Those are really the two deciding factors in a given moment. There's only really two filters, and it just depends on what combination you end up with that tells you what bucket that thing falls into. So, quadrant 3 is when something is not important, but it is urgent. Okay. So, this is typically going to fall into other people's requests. So these are meetings, for example, that someone wants to have with you. They are a random quick message. Can I quickly get you to do this? Can I quickly get your feedback on X? Or it can even be, which is the most common amongst teams, and even for some people with their clients, when client or team messages are perceived to be very time sensitive. So there's often this perception that because my client messages me right now, I have to dive into it right now. Or because my team member messages me right now, I have to dive into it right now. And realistically, again, like most teams are the people creating that urgency. Most clients or coaches are the ones that are creating that urgency. So you have to be very careful around allowing external, factors and people and influences and their priorities to shift and rearrange your priorities within your day. You have to ask that critical question of, is this really important? Even though they're adding lots of urgency to it and they're telling me I need this right now, I got to get on a meeting today, I got to do this today. Is it important? They have urgency, but is it important enough for you to actually do that? Is it truly important? Even though it feels urgent, does it have significance? So you want to be conscious of that, because even when someone says, I want to have a meeting today at 3 p.m. Okay, well, it depends on obviously what your role is and who it's with. Are you a contractor in someone's business? Are you the CEO of the business? But you have to really be intentional. Is it really an important meeting? Is it something that needs to happen today and it has a lot of impact or significance on the business? I would argue 9 times out of 10 when people are doing this last minute urgency stuff, 9 times out of 10, it's not important. Meaning, if it had to wait till tomorrow, it could. A client messages you, if you don't answer for 24 hours, that there should be no issue in that. If you, for example, like, I got this message from a client today, or I got this message from a team member today, I have to answer in the next hour. No, you don't. No, you don't. So again, there's not an emergency. That's the difference, is that if a client messages you with an emergency, that's different. If this is regular scheduled communication that you always take 24 to 48 hours to get back to people, if that's how you've set your expectation with your deliverables, there's a lot of urgency coming from the client, but there may not necessarily actually be any significance, meaning the urgency is something they're imposing on me. It's not actually urgent. So being really conscious of what are things that other people put onto you that they determine or they perceive to be time sensitive, that you in fact go, well, wait a second, no, that's not time sensitive for me, or that doesn't feel urgent for me because it's also not important. Now, last, we have quadrant 4, which is when something is not important and it's not urgent. I will tell you, this is where a lot of the noise in business comes in. Busy work. Just the only thing I can describe it as is just busy work. So many business owners, and yourself maybe included, are spending hours every week on stuff that does literally nothing. It's not urgent. It doesn't move the needle in the business. And you're just burning through your time. And so it can be things like, when someone creates a Canva graphic and they spend 2 hours on the Canva graphic. This is not an urgent task and this is not an important adjustment, right? Like, this is such a waste of time. Scrolling social media, you know who you are. It doesn't matter when it is. You are scrolling social media and looking up and being like, oh my God, how is an hour passed? Right? Like, this is something that is not important and it is not urgent that you do it right now. And I would say the other thing I see with a lot of our perfectionist type clients is people who do endless tweaking. So, like, kind of similar to the Canva aspect, you will look at an email sequence and like refine, 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 and like, I'm gonna change this word and change this subject line. I'm gonna change this call to action. I'm gonna change this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it was done in the first place. You are typically, when you are spending time in those things, and I'm just gonna be very direct about it, you are spending time on things that you get a dopamine kickback from, or that you are using to numb. It's that simple. 9 times out of 10, unless you are like at night, very typical behavior, you're at night, you've gotten ready for bed, you lay in bed, you scroll through TikTok for half an hour, okay. But in the middle of the day, the reason you're scrolling through your phone and you just get sucked into this vortex of social media is because you are in deep avoidance. You know what you need to be doing. You know what would move the needle in your business today. You know what would be better use of your time. Maybe you, I don't know, making marketing instead of consuming it. You know all of those things. The thing is, you're using TikTok or you're using social media in general and scrolling as a way to numb. And so we have to be very conscious of what those things are. We have to be conscious of where are we hiding in busyness in our business that really is not moving the needle. And the reason that this last quadrant is one of the most impactful when people catch it, and it's one of the most impactful when we can change the behavior, is that, for example, in a given week, if you put 5 posts out on social media and you, because you're in avoidance of some other things in your business, or you don't really feel like doing them, whatever it might be, you spend excess time making a carousel, for example. Well, listen, I love a good carousel as much as the next person, but if I can get you to be really intentional with not spending endless hours tweaking it in the belief that if you just change that font a little to the left or a little bit bigger, that it's going to be the reason it succeeds, it won't. And so if I can change that perception and behavior, we might gain back 5 hours in your week. So the question then becomes, what could you do with 5 additional hours inside your business this week? So these have pretty intense outcomes that are connected to them, pretty intense impact when we have awareness of these and we hone them in. So if you are someone who is constantly overwhelmed and you are constantly feeling busy and you're not moving the needle, I want to tell you that you are stuck in quadrant 1 and quadrant 3, which means that you are someone who is focusing on things that are important and urgent. So you have a lot of fires that are happening. And you also are probably focusing on what other people create as your urgency, not anything that's important. They just say it's urgent. So because of that, you don't question the importance of it or significance of it. You just do it. The other thing that I will say really, really impacts scaling is when you protect your time in quadrant 2, which is when you really aggressively protect what is important and not urgent, because that's the needle moving stuff. The fires are going to happen. They happen to the best of the businesses, But really the thing that we know grows the business is when something's not reactive, it's not urgent, it's not 911, but it is something important and it has a domino, it has a significance to what it does within the business. And so quadrant 2 is really where we want to be to scale the business. We want to be focusing on important things and we don't want there to be constant urgency around everything. And if that's something you can live in most of the time, you're in a very good spot to be able to scale your business. So, a simple question to ask yourself is how much are the urgencies of the week, clients, social media, team messages, whatever, how much are those driving your week? And if you feel like more often than I'd like, okay, great. Well, then that's the first place we want to start. We want to get really intentional about why are those fires happening and really triaging that. So this is a cool, strategy. It's a cool framework. It's a cool matrix. But I'm not going to leave you hanging with just this is the cool strategy. So hope that helps. Let's actually talk about a step and a process that you can follow to triage your current to-do list, maybe that you have right now. So this is something I want to preface. You can do in under 10 minutes. You do not need a ton of time to do this. It doesn't take a long time. And the more that you do it, the better and faster at it you're going to become. But the first step really is you got to brain dump. So I usually tell people take 2 to 3 minutes just to brain dump anything that is bouncing around inside of your head. Really, ultimately, I want you to think is your deciding factor if it belongs on the page. I also want to say you can do this in your personal life. Okay. So if I'm like, I want to put up the Christmas tree. I want to clean out the garage. I need to do laundry. I want to wash my bedding. I need to organize underneath my sink. I need to clean my car. Okay, great. You can still take the Eisenhower. And again, is it important? Is it urgent? Is it not important, but urgent? Like you want to start to think about using this same framework in other areas of your life too. So, by the way, as I break this down, this is not just for your business. It can happen in literally anything in your home, with your family, with your personal to do list. It doesn't matter. So, step one is actually to brain dump. Get everything out of your head. And one of the things for all you high achievers who like to skip to the front of the line and be the top of the class, do not edit this. Do not be like, oh, well, that goes here and that goes here and this goes here. Do not edit this while you are brain dumping. That's the rule. You brain dump, you do not edit. So you just got to get pen to paper and actually outline and brain dump what all these things are. Okay. So that's step one. Beside each of these, I want you to outline is this I? So put an I beside it, which is this important as a task? So in your business, it might be, does this connect directly to revenue? Does it impact retention? Is this something that we are going to see cause an issue in client delivery? Is this something that is intentional for our growth? So is this something that is crucial and important? Now, do not put I beside everything, okay? You, I know, again, have emotion connected to the things that you're working on, as do I. But again, these are the critical, which is why we came back to perspective to start. You have to be really honest with yourself. Is it really an important thing that's going to impact the business in the next 3 to 6 months? Because if it's not, then it may not be something that we actually need to be labeling as important. 2, I want you to go beside each task and you're first going to go down and say, is there an I beside it? So some might not have an I because it means it's not important. And other ones we would say it does have an I because this is a very important task for the business. Second, we're going to go right beside that and we're going to go down that list again, top to bottom, and we're going to go you, which is this something that is urgent? So it's important. Is it urgent? So you're going to then go down and you're going to go see the list again. Do we have I and you beside certain tasks? Do we just have a you on some? Do we just have an I on some? This is going to help you to really understand how to fit this list into the quadrants. So don't worry about the quadrants just yet. Your goal right now is brain dump the list, number one. Number two, label it as important or urgent. Okay. So you're just going to go through and literally write I, you on whatever ones feel like they land. And if it helps you from a visual perspective, because some people don't like the idea of having gaps beside things on their list, you can also, if it's not important, put NI. Or if it's not urgent, put NU. So that's also something just visually, if it helps at all, that's also something that some people will do when they're organizing their brain dump. So step 3 is now we are going to refine these with some core questions. So we're going to first organize the tasks. So you're going to see your list and you're going to see all the ones that fall into the 4 quadrants. So all I want you to do is I want you to sort them. I personally find that for myself, I do this really fast within a Google Doc. So I will literally just brain dump everything. I'll put IU, NU, and I will literally just copy paste. This goes here, this goes here. And before you know it, you've got your 4 different lists that follow the 4 quadrants that we talked about today. So you're going to, in sorting that list, now see after you've labeled it what you have in each quadrant. So now that you have all, for example, quadrant 1, which will be all the things on your list that had an I and a U beside it, they're important and they're urgent. The prompt I want you to think about is you either do this first or fast, or you schedule it to happen ASAP. So questions, I literally have questions outlined that I want to say to you word for word. Is this directly tied to revenue or a promise that I have already made? What is the latest that this can be realistically done? Okay, what is the latest that this can be realistically done? And can any part of this be delegated? Okay, so we have all the things that you're currently up against or that you're looking at that are important and they are urgent. So they will have an I and a U beside it. And we need to very quickly decide, can I do this first? Can I do it fast? And can I schedule it ASAP? Like, how do I get movement on this quadrant as fast as possible? And to question yourself, is this tied to revenue? Is this something that's based off a promise I already made? What is the latest this can realistically be done? And can any of this be delegated? Those become, for your day, the start of your non negotiables that day. Those are non negotiable, need to get done today. Now, remember, if we live in quadrant 1, if we live in this has to get done today and you do this triage practice, let's just say you commit to yourself and you say, I'm going to do this for a week. And every single day, your entire day gets filled up with quadrant 1 and you never get to do anything else. That is a big, big flare within your business that there needs to be a new strategy of how you're doing things, because it really does mean that you are living in survival. You're not really moving the needle in any way within the business or truly growing it. So then we're going to go, now that we have all of our I and U tasks, we're going to set those as our non-negotiables. So now we go to quadrant 2, which are anything on your list that you have I or NU beside. Okay. So anything on your list that has an I, important, and an NU, which means it's not urgent. Okay. So anything important but not urgent. I want you, remember, Q or quadrant 2 is the unlock to scaling a business. So this is where I want you to protect these things, these projects, these tasks as like meeting with your future self, because this is something that is really crucial for the ability for a business to scale. So questions to ask yourself. Which of, 1 or 2 of these quadrant 2 tasks, so of these things that are important and not urgent, which 1 to 2, if done this week, would create the biggest relief or the biggest progress for me and for the business? So what are 1 to 2 things off that list that you have that are important but not urgent, that if you made momentum on, if you made progress on, would create a lot of relief or ultimately create a lot of progress for you within the business? Also, what is a tiny version or a tiny portion of this that I could do today in about 15 to 30 minutes? Where does this live in my calendar? Where have I dedicated time to complete this? I want to hit on something on this one. What tiny version of this could I do today? 15 to 30 minutes. The other thing that many people, and potentially even yourself, do is that you kind of want to have this all or nothing. So you have this, I want to work on the business. I want to work on this new marketing area. I want to work on this new offer. And so I'm going to block off an entire Friday. Well, yes, in some schedules that might be possible, but there's also potentially a circumstance where that's just not possible. That's just not the case. So The other thing that you can do is say, is there a way for me to move the needle in these things that will move the needle in my business in increments of 15 minutes or of 30 minutes? Because the reality of me having an 8-hour day to spend on this is just not a reality I have right now. So that's the other thing that sometimes for some people will move this thing they want to work on, kind of kick the can down the road. And before you know it, you're not making progress. It also may be because your perception is you need to have this long extended period to work on it. When realistically, you could chunk it into pieces and chip away at it a little bit in 30 minutes each day versus all in one foul swoop. So remember, quadrant 2, which are the things that are important, but they're not urgent. This is something that are really considered to be your CEO tasks, like the things that are truly your needle movers. They're the things that are growing the business. They're the things that are going to help you to get to that next level. Like these are the things that you're going to see impact from when you take action on them. Now, quadrant 3, remember, are things that are not important. So you'll see NI on your list, and you'll also see urgent. So you'll see a U. So your list, probably beside it, you would have NI and then U. This is really a prompt of, can this be delegated? Can this be delayed? Or can this be something that is just done in kind of a batch type perspective? So I asked myself, does this actually need me? Am I actually required for this to be done? Especially for anybody with a team. I think sometimes we kind of just get into this autopilot of, I'm going to do this or I'm going to assist with X. It's like, are you actually yourself needed when it comes to that task? Question is, what would happen if this thing that you're looking at just didn't get done at all? Like, what if nothing happened on it? Nothing was executed. You took no action. What would happen? And can you, if it's a client, for example, or a team member who's, again, forcing their urgency on you, can we reset that urgency with a boundary? Or can we reset that by kind of updating expectations from somebody? So like even example of this would be, I had a client who literally just started with us and had sent me something for feedback. And they said, yeah, like I'm going to send you this doc of something I'm working on. And if you can get this back to me tomorrow, then I'll do XYZ. And so in the moment, of course, I could have been like, oh my gosh, I got to get this done to her to get it back to her tomorrow. But I said, hey, thank you so much for sending this over. I typically do need like a couple day turnaround to get documents back because obviously I need time to go through them and have time to be able to like sit down and really pay attention to it. So I don't want to give you a quick answer in between calls, but what I can do is have this back to you kind of thing for next Tuesday. So I just had to reset expectations because what it meant was I can't have, because this person says like, chop, chop, I want this now. Number one, it's not in our contracts that we do that. And number two, she's not meaning anything by it. She's just, excited and wanting to get feedback on her stuff so she can get moving on it. But the reality is that it did initially, previously for me, it created a lot of urgency. It created a lot of, I have to do this. Like she's a private client. I have to take care of this now because she says I have to take care of it now. No, the expectation was clear in the offer. Like I've set the expectation before this is our process. And all you need to do is just reinforce what the boundary is. And she was like, oh my God, yeah, no problem. No rush. Great. So I got it back to her Tuesday and that's it. So it was also in that moment, old me, before I really started to integrate this, would have been like, I have to do it now. I have to do it now. And now I really take a lot of intention to say, am I creating my own urgency? Meaning, is your lack of boundaries potentially actually the reason you're creating your own disaster? Because people are expecting things of you and putting their urgency on you because there's a possibility, if I think I know you the way that I think I know you, that you have had people ask you for things, chop, chop, get it to me now. And you're like, okay, yeah, I got it to you. Here, here, here. And you're like, just this like drug dealer of dopamine, right? That is why it keeps happening. When I tell someone as a client, yeah, I need 3 days. Guess what? After hearing me say I need 3 days for the last 3 things they submitted, guess what they now know? She probably needs 3 days, right? So you're actually training how much people are asking of you and how much external urgency is being put on you. So if this is something that you feel like you've been experiencing for a long time, I also want you to have that kind of critical conversation with yourself to say, are you possibly I'm not saying for sure, but are you possibly part of the problem? Because I know for me, I was. So what you want to think about with this section of, again, not important, and they also are not urgent, so not impactful and not urgent, needing to be done right now, these can be delegated. They might be able to be batched within like a 30-minute block and kind of get a bunch of them out of the way. Or just as food for thought, maybe they need to just be straight up deleted, meaning maybe these are just not even a matter of, that they're not important, or it's not even a matter of that I have to delay them. I'm not looking to delegate them. I just realized this is not even important. This is not even something I want to spend my time on. I'm not going to kick the can down the road. This is just something that I'm going to straight up use this moment to realize I just need to delete this task entirely, because this is just not something that I need to be focusing on. So lastly, you've got quadrant 4, which is your NI and your NU. So anything on that list that had NI and NU underneath it. So this is something that you need to release and reserve for true downtime in the business, okay? So is this something that I am doing or executing because I'm avoiding something else? Remember I said, like, we're scrolling TikTok, but we have things that need to be happen. This is something that we're like, okay, am I doing this because I'm avoiding something? If I had only 3 hours to work today, would this thing I'm doing make the cut? And is this thing that maybe you're labeling as rest actually a mask for something that you're using to numb? Most of the quadrant 4, which is not important tasks that are also not urgent, are things that 9 times out of 10 get crossed out and are not actually something that make our business grow or impact our business in any way. They're things that we really kind of like sort toward the end. That's like the after filter of all the remnants of the other filters that we talk through. So when we think about, we have this clarity, okay? So we have your brain dump, step 1. Step 2, we either put, urgent on something, NU, which is not urgent. We put important, which is an I, or NI, which is not important. We just kind of go through the list, okay? Important, urgent, not important, urgent. And we go through and we label them all. Then we're going to sort those into our quadrants and just reflect, okay? We're just going to reflect on what those are. And then we're going to move from, last but not least, in step 4, taking this list and this organization, and we're going to move it into making a plan, okay? So now that we have them organized and we've reflected and asked ourselves some critical questions, you can now take this and you can move it into a plan. So what you're going to do is you're going to pick, on average, around 3-ish, 1 to 3 tasks that are your quadrant 1 tasks. Those are the things that are the non-negotiables, okay? So those fires, those emergencies, those things that just have to get done. They have big deadlines that are happening today. They need to happen in this moment. That is something that I want you to pick 1 to 3 of those. And I want you to literally pick those tasks and get going on them. So those are your urgent. We got to start with those. Then I want you to pick one thing. I'm going to say this very slow and very simple. One thing from your quadrant 2. Okay. You want to look at dedicating today, even 20 minutes. 20 minutes to something long-term for your future you, for your future self, for your future business. We are not going to allow the demands of your environment to determine where your energy and your momentum and your progress goes today. And this stage of making this part of this plan is what allows that to ensure that happens every single day. You then are going to go into assigning your quadrant 3s. Okay, so assigning the tasks. Does this need to be delegated? Is this simple admin that I can give to somebody? And ultimately, you're going to look at quadrant 4 and you're going to say, I need to park or delete these. Anything that falls into not important and not urgent is something that can be deleted or straight, like just completely bye, not doing it. Or it can also get put into the bucket of being put into a parking lot, which basically are these ideas, concepts, and plans that you're going to potentially execute on, but at a future date. And how I want you to think about success is if you outline these. So again, 1 to 3 things in your quadrant 1, 1 thing from quadrant 2, assign your quadrant 3, and delete or park your quadrant 4. If you walk away from your day, from your week or your month, in consistently doing this and having done your quadrant 1 and quadrant 2, which again, back to your thought process to anchor into this. We are focusing on things that are important and urgent, and we're focusing on things that are important and not urgent. You will notice a theme here that we are only focusing on things that are actually important in the business. Too many businesses are focusing on things that are just not important, and they also are just not urgent. So if you walk away doing your quadrant 1 of any important task, whether urgent or not urgent, you are moving your business forward. You get a gold star, you get a trophy because you are moving the needle in your business, is what that means. Now, how much you're moving the needle is still a question because it depends on, again, the practice of this, how much time it's taking from you. All those things are another factor. But this helps you to constantly know, am I focusing on the right things? How do I sort this to-do list? Am I focusing on the right things? How do I sort this to-do list? So triaging is as a skill. How I want you to think about this. What you learned today was a skill that you can use to help you to get back into the driver's seat of your business. Because too many of you are looking at your business as like, I'm an employee and my business gave me this to-do list today, so I have to get it done by the end of the day. You are the owner and the operator of your business. So because of that, you need to be the person who is able to, in the emergency room of this person needs that and this for the clients and this for the team, to be able to hold the structure of what needs to happen and why, and what really is important versus what's not important. So if you are overwhelmed by today, one of the two things I would say, if you want a little hack, you can run this episode. If you want some notes from it, you can absolutely run this through like an AI if that's something helpful for you to kind of literally have all the questions that I asked, all of that. And with this, I also want to share that this is something that you can see as a visual. So if you want to like physically, visually see the quadrants, you can absolutely do that to be able to really see the buckets that I talked about. But how I want you to think about this is if you get this into a Google Doc, if you get this into a notes pad on your phone, you put these prompts in there, you can literally do this every single day. And I assure you that if you use this on a daily basis, when you start in the morning, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and you go through this and you made that a practice, let's just say even for a week, I will guarantee you, you will move more in your business than you ever have in the weeks or months prior to that. And that is because you are honing in your focus on the stuff that really matters. And so this is where, when people say like, oh, we all have the same hours, part of that I also have an issue with because, like, for example, if you're like a mom, you do not have the same hours as the next person necessarily. But when we have these hours, regardless of what those hours are, what I tell people is how many hours you work is not actually important to me as what you're doing with those hours. So I don't care if you work 3 hours a week on your business. I don't care if you work 3 hours a day. I don't care if you work 12 hours a day. It doesn't matter how long you work on your business. It matters to me that how are you using those hours? And what I find with a lot of scaling businesses is that they are working far more hours than they need to be working, strictly based off the fact that the hours they have, they're not using intentionally. Like they're just burning hours on stuff that don't do anything for the business. And they're left overall frustrated because nothing that they put energy or focus on did anything. And that's because they weren't important in the first place before they started the task. So I really hope today was helpful for you. I am so excited for you to integrate this. You have no idea because I know that this is going to create such massive relief for you in this day, in this week. And so, as I said, like use this. Like, don't just be like, oh my God, this would be so cool. I'd feel so much less overwhelmed. Take this and start to press go on it. Put this into a Google Doc, put it into a notes pad, put it into something and start to flex this muscle. Because when you do, you will not be sorry. You're going to see incredible things start to happen within your business and within your productivity and your to-do list. And most importantly, if it's landed for you, please feel free to also share this with your team. If you are someone who has a team member or you have a larger team of multiple people, they also can get in the practice of doing this exact same thing. And so I also want to cue you with that. If this is someone that you want to also make sure is doing this alongside you, share today's episode with them. Share this with another entrepreneur that you know is feeling overwhelmed in the massive swim of to-do lists, and allow them to have this resource to be able to sort and to triage what they're navigating on their to-do list. So with all that being said, I'm so happy that you were here today and spending this last hour with me. I also want to take a quick second to just say a massive thank you because I have just been so deeply blessed with just incredible women reaching out via Instagram. So I've had a lot of just amazing DMs from you of episodes that are landing for you, some of the favorite topics that you have, just I genuinely can't say enough how insanely grateful I am for just all of you who listen to this show, and also with that, who are allowing it to really be what it is becoming, to give incredible insights of topics that you'd love to hear about, things that you're navigating in business. Everything that you share, I want you to know, is something that I really do take to heart for myself, but also for our team. And we try to use that as insight to help us craft who we have on, what topics we talk about, when we talk about them, and making sure that every single episode that we have kind of acts as like a little masterclass for you to help you to step into something bigger within your business, but also something bigger within your life. So if there's anything that you want to share, maybe you've never DM'd me before, or maybe you have multiple times and you guys know who you are, I want you to know my DMs are always open. I absolutely love to hear from you of just anything that landed, questions you have, awarenesses you had, aha moments, whatever it might be. I can't tell you, all of it fills my bucket and immensely helps myself and our team to make this even better for you. So with that being said, I will see you on next week's episode. And as always, stay ambitious.